Today we finish off with our study of emotional independence, SD 48.8. We are on page 19. We're talking about the nature of stream winning, or what is the purpose, the goal of being a Buddhist as intended by the Buddha, as found in the teachings of the early suttas. Every religion teaches some kind of spiritual goal, the highest end, if you like. So in other words, to be a Buddhist, our highest end, goal in life, is to enter the stream. This is a poetic way of saying to work towards nirvana. Entering the stream is a boating figure. It comes from a very interesting chapter called Okanti Samyutta. Okanti means to go down to a boat. So in other words, as Buddhists, we are getting off, going away from this dangerous land, this jungle, if you like. We're going to this boat called the Dharma, and we're going to sail down the river called the Eightfold Path to nirvana. So this act of entering the stream is the first real effective step towards awakening. In other words, in this life itself, we're assured of liberation. And it is something we must take up consciously. It doesn't happen by accident. In other words, we must want to become awakened by simply telling ourselves, I want to awaken to true reality. I want to get out of suffering. I want to be free. So this is the idea of stream winning. I've used the word emotional independence because this is a term which is often used to describe the nature of a stream winner. A stream winner is someone who is emotionally free. It is not that he has no feelings. On the contrary, a stream winner has very powerful, very happy, very joyful feeling of faith and interest in the Dharma, and of compassion and action and so on. In fact, when we talk about being a stream winner, we're talking about someone who is really dedicated to the Buddha's teaching and who can effectively use the Buddha's teaching to help others. And most importantly, we do not fall below the human plane to lower realms and get caught up so that our awakening will be delayed for such a long, painful time. So, as previously mentioned, there are three fetters which need to be broken. Fetters are things which hold us back. They are mental fetters. The first is this idea of the self is permanent, self-identity view, identifying with ourselves. In a sense, thinking that we cannot change. And the second one is doubt. Again here, the idea that we can't help ourselves. We need some kind of agency, some kind of outside help to help us. Of course, we don't mind people helping us, like the Buddha teaching us the Dharma. But ultimately, as you say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The horse must himself drink the water. So we must ourselves want to be awakened, want to be saved, want to be liberated. It just doesn't come to us automatically. Of course, there are some people who like to say, oh, we're already awakened. So this is just a way of talking. It's not a very helpful way of talking, actually, because it seems as if you don't have to make any more effort. It's just like telling a sick person, actually, you're not sick, It doesn't make much sense. So basically, we can become well. And everyone can, if they make this effort, become well. Of course, we need the medicine, and here the medicine is the Dharma, but we have to take the medicine ourselves. So we've spoken two of these factors about. First is a self-identity view, and then the second one is doubt. And today we finish off with the factor on attachment to rituals and vows. Why this, what this is, and why this factor should be broken. Now, if you look at the three factors, they kind of they flow nicely in terms of our actions, building up this our approach to awakening or nirvana or liberation. This first, we accept ourselves as we are changing, we're impermanent. Number two, we know that we can make this effort towards self-liberation. And number three, that is attachment, breaking that factor of attachment to rituals and vows, means we're going to put in more self-effort. We're not going to depend on anything outside. Any kind of dependence on outside help, especially total dependence, without making any self-effort, is said to be superstition, which we will deal with a little later. So, rituals and vows are specifically mentioned because in the Buddha's time, many of these religious people thought that one way of getting out of this world, one way of attaining liberation, is to perform certain rituals, to behave in a certain way. So you have sila, meaning different kinds of rules, like not taking certain kinds of food, and you have vata, sila vata, rituals and vows. So vata are certain kind of vows, like picking up a certain kind of behavior. For example, some of them have this strange belief that if we behave like cows or dogs, even the two famous ascetics, the dog ascetic, the cow ascetic, to live like these animals, very different from humans, you will attain some kind of liberation. But the Buddha's answer is very clear. If you behave like a cow, you will be reborn, you become a cow in the future. If you behave like a dog, you end up being born as a dog in the future, so it's not going to be very helpful. In fact, even today, when we talk about human behavior, we do recognize this being caught up with rituals and vows is not very helpful because it cuts off reality, and we try to live in this artificial world, not wanting to face reality, which is really troubling us. And the various terms for this, one common term we hear is obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. People keep on getting caught up with certain rituals. Like, for example, checking at every lock, every door and window in the house, make sure it's properly locked, and then checking it again and checking it again many times. A sense of lack of security. Or there is washing mania. You keep on washing our hands all the time, thinking that we have been defiled and so on. So these are very serious symptoms of something wrong with the mind, something that needs to be corrected. So in a sense, the Buddha recognized this kind of condition, this kind of problem long ago, in his own time. So he's telling us these are things we must be aware of. We are caught up with this kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder of a more subtle nature called attachment to rituals and vows. We think that by just praying, for example, we can solve a problem, or we can get what we want, or we can go to heaven, or we can be liberated. In other words, by freezing an idea will not help us. So in simple terms, you might even say, if you really want to awaken, you have to live life, so to speak. Well, of course, that's such a big statement. It can mean anything to anyone. It can even sound fashionable. and in the end we don't really do anything except just talk about it. So there is something more that we need to do. When we break the fetter of rituals and vows, what do we need to do? Number one, we need to recognize that we are caught up with it, that there is this cycle, the samsaric behavior. And this cycle, this rut, prevents us from communicating with other people, prevents us from touching our genius, our true potential, can really be useful to others in bringing happiness to others. So this is where, in other words, we're not really solving the problem. We are just turning away from the problem, or it's an ostrich effect. We're closing our eyes. We pretend the problem is not there, but it's all around us. So if it's a very profound sense of denial, even, to use another psychological term. More broadly, this factor of attachment to rituals and vow is either the ignorance or rejection of the understanding or idea of conditionality, that things happen through causes and effects. Whatever happens to many causes working together, and there are many effects following it also. It's only where we choose to look. We tend to look for only one cause, one effect, because we want to blame somebody, or we feel that we lack the ability to know what's going on. But the idea is to examine all these causes, examine the effects, and from there, by observing, we learn, we notice. Another way of observing is to see the impermanence of it all. Impermanence here means things change. When things change, that means they are connected to one another. So how are they connected? And when you see this connection, then you're more prepared. You know what to do. For example, you see cause effect, right? You touch something hot, fire, you are burnt, cause effect. So next time you know this is something I should not touch. And we extend this kind of understanding to other things. So in other words, if we either are ignorant of this nature of conditionality or reject this notion of conditionality, we, on the contrary, start thinking that whatever happens to us has only one cause, especially a single cause, the primary cause, the beginning of the world, that this is one God creating the world, and so on, this kind of idea. But things are never that simple. Take, for example, there's this very notorious argument about why there should be a God. This person says, if you find a watch in the desert, obviously somebody must have made this watch. This watch is such a complicated device. Therefore, there must be a God. But it's a wrong argument, because we know very well a watch is not made by one single person. There is someone mining the metal, another person purifying the metal, another person making it into little pieces so that they can be worked on, and then you have someone putting it together, and then someone working with the finer parts, and so on. So in other words, there are many people working together to make a watch. So same thing with human life. We are evolving, changing all the time. We did not just appear suddenly like a bubble, or like a mushroom or something. So this idea of causes, effects, of change, of evolution, it's a very important idea to consider. Not that belief that whatever happens to us is only one cause. In fact, there's a word for such a belief. It's called superstition. Superstition means to blame whatever happens to us on just one cause. And very often that cause has very little connection with what's happening. So instead we should be looking at the conditions that brought about this result that we are facing. So in other words, instead of fault finding, we should be studying conditions. Instead of blaming, if someone falls sick, instead of blaming spirits and demons or somebody cast a hex, like a scientist, like a researcher, we find out what really caused the sickness. Right, first we study nature of the sickness, and then we identify the causes. These are the first two noble truths. And then we work, or rather we imagine what is the ideal state, the healthy state, and then we work towards it. This is noble truths 3 and 4. So you have a health model here. So instead of finding faults, you find solutions. No one is to be blamed. Conditions are to be blamed if we want to blame anything at all. So if we are superstitious, then we limit our growth. Then we cause problems upon society. And of course, most damagingly, we limit the growth of our minds. Our minds become narrow, and then there's some kind of mind control. Only certain beliefs are allowed. So you can imagine what kind of society it's going to become, where the mind does not grow. So this is where we can degenerate into subhuman states. Or if we do grow, then we tend to objectify things. We thignify qualities. Instead of talking about goodness, happiness, kindness, we try to define all these things. Goodness, happiness, kindness, in terms of things. We begin to misunderstand that happiness is measured in how much we have, in having rather than in being. If I have a lot of things, I'm happy. But what if I lose those things? As Eric Fromm says something like, if you are what you have, and you lose what you have, then what are you? You won't be happy. So, what we are and what we have are two different things. What we have is never really ours. Things, maybe we use it as far as it's useful to us, but what we're truly happy, we are calm and peaceful inside. That is truly to be, and truly to be emotionally independent. You cannot have emotional independence. You have to be emotionally independent. You are happy for yourself, not because of anyone or anything. And in that way, you can show happiness, bring happiness to others. So once you dignify something or you objectify qualities, then we begin to measure them. We put a price on them. And then you can buy and sell these things. And this is what Buddhism has come to today. Buddhism has become like a very sophisticated kind of business. So this is, in other words, Buddhism is being used to enrich ourselves. It's very difficult to find people who do not measure Buddhism in terms of money today, for example. Of course, we do need some kind of wealth for growth, but then we have to remember the real aim of being a Buddhist. Even if we do not get those things that, like buildings, a center, a retreat center, a big temple, or funds for this or that, we can still work in other ways to study the Dharma. Just imagine the Buddha. He has no bank account. People gave him centers, parks, and monasteries. Even then, doesn't own them. They belong to the Sangha, the four directions, if you like. So in other words, here, the Dharma, Buddhism, does not make a problem of what we have. Because the real issue is to build ourselves up to become true individuals. And true individuals are those who are emotionally independent. Now, there are other ways of looking at this emotional independence, if you like, because we can use, for example, some famous fairy tales, especially the Rapunzel story. Now, the Rapunzel story deals with some kind of exchange. An adult exchange his child with a power figure, and to secure personal welfare or safety. So here again, we are looking for answers outside of ourselves. You find this kind of unequal exchange also in the story of Rumpelstiltskin, Beauty and the Beast, and so on. So we just take one story, Rapunzel, and see how this can help us understand the nature of emotional independence. So the story goes that this person, according to one version is a woodsman and another version is a king, he steals some Rapunzel, a kind of lettuce, a vegetable from a witch's garden, and is caught. And then the story goes that this witch is very powerful, so he threatened to punish this thief in a terrible way. And of course, the man says, "I will give you whatever you want." And the witch says, "Okay, so what can you give me?" So in the end, he thinks he can only give something of value, that is his child, coming child. So when this girl child was born, the child was given to the witch, and the witch, of course, the child's called Rapunzel after the vegetable. Now, this child doesn't belong to the witch, so the witch has the child, wants the child. So imagine the situation here. She's probably really insecure about this. So she puts her on a high tower without any stairs or windows except right at the top, with only a single window. And Rapunzel grows, her hair becomes long, and she is very good in singing. The story goes that one day a prince hears her voice and falls in love with that voice, and goes to this tower, and she lets down her hair, and this prince comes up, and these two young people fall in love. And of course the witch discovers this and decides to punish them both, decides to ostracize them. So here you see love happening, but something's coming in between. So the witch punishes by blinding the prince, and by the time the Rapunzel has twins, here you have again this symbolism of duality. You have the prince, Rapunzel, and the two child. So there is this duality. Whenever there's duality, there is suffering, there's the danger of breaking up. So the witch exiles both of them. Exiles the prince first, then later Rapunzel looks for the prince in the wilderness, finds him. It's very saddened with the prince because the prince also is blind, and the story goes that her tears somehow managed to heal this prince and bring back his sight. So they're all united and they live happily ever after together. So basically this story shows that story of loss, story of maturation, and somehow if you're caught up in this tower, you will never know the world. You're stuck there. We're often stuck in our own tower of ideas and views of religion and science and whatever we believe in. And then someone comes along, someone like the Buddha comes along, tells us, oh, there's something bigger, more beautiful than this. So we come down from our tower. But there's something trying to stop us from knowing this. There's someone, a wrong idea, something from the past trying to prevent us from becoming free. It could be Buddhism itself, or rather our wrong idea of Buddhism itself, that prevents us from seeing what the Buddha really taught. So we are blinded. But only through love, only through loving kindness, this openness, we can heal ourselves, we can really see again. And finally, if we understand this, in other words, we see within ourselves the truth, the joy, the happiness, then in the end, whatever we seem to have lost, we get them all back. Nothing was lost in the first place, because whatever we have is not ours. Whatever we are is really us. That is true joy, true happiness, emotional independence. So you find this, the Rapunzel, the prince, and their two children happily together, emotionally independent as a family, if you like, complete. So, in other words, we can see the world as a learning place. The world, being what it is filled with suffering in the sense that we can never get what we really want from it. This is the meaning of life. And yet, if we make an effort, we can free ourselves from this shortcoming when we realize that when we're looking up for answers for what we want outside, we won't get it. So our purpose in life is to see how can we get this happiness. And the purpose is to look within ourselves. So there's meaning and purpose in the nature of life. Seeing in this way, understanding nature of conditions, impermanence of the world. So in other words, there's a time in our life, there's a sense of aloneness, as if we have been abandoned by all our friends, by all the people we love, even our beliefs. Some of these great saints have experienced this, but because they lack the vocabulary, they do not know what it is, so they can only use the terms that they have learned. There's a great saint of the West, for example, called St. John of the Cross. He felt as if his own God had abandoned him in what he calls the dark night of the soul. But any Buddhist who knows meditation, especially and also understanding of non-self, would say that's a beautiful experience of non-self. Indeed, meditation. If only he had the vocabulary, he's so joyful instead of feeling sad and lost with such an experience. That is why the Dharma is very helpful to us. It also gives us the vocabulary to understand the nature of our experience of aloneness, spiritual aloneness. But this aloneness is not loneliness. It's telling us that we can be emotionally independent, we can be free of the world, and that way we'll be able to help the world. It's as if we are out of the dangerous waters, and that's why we can start pulling people out of the dangerous waters. And such a person is called a stream winner, one who discovered himself, his own inner potential, his own inner happiness. In fact, to be a true layman, we should aspire at least to be a stream winner. It is difficult to be an arahat for a layperson because we have sensual desires and we have to run families and businesses and so on. But being a stream winner, you can do all these worldly things within the limits, the guidance of the 5 precepts. So in other words, a stream winner is a true layman, layperson. And suttas like the Chandala Sutta define such a layman as a lotus layman, or white lotus layman, or some kind of this imagery of lotus. And such a true lay disciple has faith, saddha, in other words, he understands the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as ideals of awakening. He has moral virtue, keeps the precepts naturally. He does not believe in rituals to invoke luck, right? It's not superstitious. He relies on karma, not luck. You understand the nature of karma? Karma meaning the actions that we do. We're not punished for the actions, but we become those actions that we do, so they have to be positive and good. 5, he does not seek the gift worthy outside of the teachings, but gives priority to those who practice the teaching. So here means the first priority of his help are to those who want to be helped. And of course, His compassion will extend to others if others are willing to help too. He's not yet a Buddha, so as a stream winner, we might not be able to help everyone else, but definitely we are beginning to build up this ability to reach out to others. So here we can see as a stream winner, as a layperson even, or even as a monastic who wants to take this path, we need to free ourselves from being caught up with life as a ritual, with goodness as a ritual. A ritual means an act we do without thinking. Whether body, speech and mind, an act of the body, of talking, of thinking, it should not be a mere ritual. In other words, we should be mindful of what's going on, examine the conditions, causes, effect, rising, falling, impermanence, and then see what we can learn from that about ourselves, about others, about the world. So in other words, it's about learning. To live is to learn. A stream winner is one who's learning all this, what happens before us, around us, so that we become emotionally independent. So we see the Buddha's teaching like cooking instructions, like a menu. Okay? So if you have a menu, you study the menu, you prepare the dishes, and you cook it, then you taste it. So we've got to do it ourselves. We have to eat the food ourselves. So also, it's like a journey that we make. A map alone is not enough. A map is helpful, but you have to make the journey yourself. And once you make the journey, you go on moving, you don't stop. Even being slow is okay, but the idea is never to stop on this journey towards self-knowledge. Because if we do stop, then of course there are dangers all around in the forest, in the wilderness. So we will not, it's okay to be slow, but we just got to keep on moving. In other words, keep on discovering yourself, keep on learning about yourself. And the more you do that, the more independent you become, the more free you become from ideas about yourself, from ideas about what people think about you. As one philosopher says, it doesn't really matter what you think you are, or what someone thinks you are, or even what you think you are. The important thing is what you really are. And it is something we have to discover for ourselves. In other words, only in discovering for ourselves who we really are that we become emotionally independent. And here, one last note. What does it really mean to be emotionally independent? It doesn't mean, well, there's a big difference between emotional independence and emotional alienation. Because someone may say, oh, I don't need anyone's love, and I don't care about anybody, I'm happy. I don't think anyone can be really happy that way. We might as well be a pumpkin or a potato. Emotion independence means there is no reason that you can find to be happy. I like to say we are unreasonably happy, because if you do not have a reason to be happy, nobody can take it away from you. So emotional independence means you see within yourself the true potential you have, the goodness you have, and you feel happy just for that. Of course, this is best done through meditation, for example, through loving kindness, breath meditation. You sense this deep peace in yourself, and you are happy. Now, how you talk about this, what you make of it, you can start religions of this, philosophies of this, that is secondary. The important thing is you can see this deep joy and happiness inside you, and that gives you the emotional independence. And when you are emotionally independent, you are truly empowered to share that happiness with others. Because happiness is not something you can really give others, but you can show others, just like the way, for example, one of the 5 monks called Asaji. He was so peaceful and was very happy. And Sariputta sees this very peaceful, happy monk, and he is just impressed by this monk. And he asks this monk, what's the cause of your happiness? How are you happy? I want to be happy too. So let people see that happiness in you, and they tell you, I want to be happy too. How do I be happy like you? And that's when you share this ability, this method of being emotionally independent. Right, so I think we can end here for today. Just nice, huh? Okay. Right. Welcome to Singapore. I hope the weather has been kind with you. Okay.
It has been very kind.
Right? That's good.
Should we stop the recording?
Yes, you can start recording this.
What's the messages?
Oh yeah, we'll do a short reflection and then we'll close, okay? Right. Once again, we are gathered here to reflect on the Buddha's teaching on true happiness, on emotional independence, how we can be truly happy just by being ourselves, by looking within ourselves for the answers. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. By the power of such good karma, may we in this life itself be truly happy and find all the happy answers that we're looking for. Above all, may in this life itself we attain spiritual liberation, namely stream winning. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to wish all our loved ones well and happy, no matter where they are. And also to those who are still seeking the truth, that they may find the liberating truth and be truly happy. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay.